We are at not quite 6 o'clock. Gosh, last minute goes slow when you're watching it. All right, let's just call it 6 o'clock. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, July 5th, 2022 City Council meeting. We are about to start our committee workshop discussion on the American Rescue Plan Act in dollars that we have been allocated. Just to remind you, we are now officially in person going forward with the optional remote option, but we are going to continue to broadcast and take comment and participation remotely as well. So glad not to have to read through that old disclaimer, and we are back to normal. So we'll go ahead and start with a quick roll call. Councilmember Cargill.
Here.
Councilmember Kurtz. Present. Mayor Pro Tem Foliar.
Here.
Councilmember Spencer.
I'm here.
Councilmember Dunn.
Happy to be here.
Councilmember Sahlberg.
Here.
All right, and we'll do the official excusal at the 7 o'clock for Councilmember Van Orman. She's got some family stuff going on. So we'll go ahead and get started on our ARPA update. I know David had sent out results of the polls and whatnot, and he's here, I guess, if there's any questions. And Kyle has got some figures. So if I may, Kyle, I let you kind of start it off.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Trevor's pulling that presentation up, wanted to let everybody know we got our second disbursement of funds of 1.53 today. So that is in our Lgip account currently. And so as you'll see, we've all seen this this slide before. This is essentially just updated to reflect our, and this is sorry. I'll talk you guys through this. This is a older version, but what we can see here is the disbursements that we have received to date is that 1.53 and then an additional 1.53 that we received today. And so what you see there at the bottom is accurate, that 2.58. That is in our Lgip account. That's the city's investment account. And what I'll explain a little bit, and I will send you guys the updated version of this presentation as well, because we were updating this up to the last second today. So current Lgip rates are 0.8%. So what that essentially equates to is roughly $21,000 a year in interest accumulated. What we're going to see, so Lgip historically trails the Fed's interest rate by 2 or 3 months. So as we see the Treasury kind of make these decisions to increase interest rates, we will see Lgip follow in a month or two. And so the Lgip, we do anticipate that interest rate creeping up to maybe 1.5, maybe 2 by the end of the year. It's not as sharp as the Fed. They usually they try to keep a little bit of a smoother line, and historically the Treasury has too. And so but it's hard to forecast, I guess I should say, where we see that rate ending at the end of the year. So where we can show 21,000 for an annual interest accrual at the current rate, the reality is it's probably going to be double that by this time next year is what I would say. So where we're looking at, maybe 40,000 if we don't expend any of these funds. That's based on our current balance of 2.58. And so we could see that creep up to 40, maybe 50,000 in annual accumulations if we see it trail appropriately with these increases. So next slide, please, Trevor. So we've seen this slide as well, and so I just wanted to kind of rehash what some of the considerations are out there. And so if we go back, perfect, thanks, Trevor. So we've discussed City Hall expansion. Based on council feedback, we can have staff try to gather up some cost estimates associated with what that looks like. Liberty Lake Water Sewer did put in a request for cybersecurity upgrades. And so these are all, I'll go through all these, but really it's going to boil down to council discussion on where our priorities lie and what specific functions you want us to investigate further and get cost information for. So, so Liberty Lake businesses for the Vista utility assistance. Last year, we awarded roughly $270,000 for nonprofit revenue loss. And this was the one we brought up last time we discussed ARP is the Liberty Lake Water Sewer and City Water Line joint replacement of the water line that goes to Trailhead. And then kind of a list of department requests or need for equipment kind of trails the rest of these. So you got golf operations, streets, parks, library, assistance on capital projects, things of that nature, just to get on council's radar. These are here. These are things that staff have identified as priorities. But then again, this is ultimately council's decision. So next slide, please, Trevor. So we received some input. And so I was able to speak with David late last week to get a compilation of what we've received so far regarding community engagement, outreach, and input that they have received from citizens. And so what you can see here is we have, 73 responses. So these responses can be, one survey taker, for lack of a better word, can respond to multiple areas of need. And so that's what you see here. Obviously, if you tally up all these results, it doesn't add up to 73, but this is a snapshot of what the input we have received to date prioritizes, I suppose. And so, and once again, I want to reiterate, I'm going to send this out to council for you guys to review and discuss further and develop these priorities. And so is David in council chambers? Yeah. Is there any, I just wanted to give him a chance to expand on this if he had anything else to share. If not, I can certainly move on.
Doesn't look like there's any questions on the feedback at this point.
Basically, that's just the categories, come to double digits, there are more categories and more numbers.
And can I ask a question, Mayor?
Yeah, absolutely.
Were these categories that were put on there before people had a chance to vote, or?
Yes. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, this was kind of a two-part process. We had the Saturday Farmers Market, big giant Post-it note tablet there where people could respond to any category they wanted to, any topic they wanted to. And then we did that the group did that for, 3 or 4 weeks. And then the last 2 Saturdays, we did a kind of a ballot survey. I kind of condensed some of those more popular items, grouped them together, and then also looked at some of the categories that ARPA is able to fund, some of which some people didn't write down and didn't know that they could write down. Talked to a couple staff members of other topics that could fit into the ARPA funding category, then added that to the survey list. And then that was the survey for the last 2 Saturdays. It was also an online poll, which reflects I think it's like 75 online responses at this point, and I think 11 additional paper ballots through Farmers Market. Did I over-explain your question?
No, I appreciate that information. I'm just trying to determine at the beginning when we had these categories, were we the ones who put the categories on and then people voted on there? Or did people come up and say, I'm going to write out that I want whatever?
Yes, essentially it was people writing out their own categories and I grouped them together and then combined those with, there are like around 7 categories that ARPA is able to fund. Okay. So I added that to that. And then a couple of categories that are not on the official ARPA list, but I grouped them together that way because we had a lot of votes on that through Farmers Market, one of them being roads and the other one being parks and recreation, because we had several subcategories from those 2 areas.
Thank you.
And I think, David, you had taken off some that we couldn't, like we had, our
Extra
third,
lane on the
third
freeway.
lane
Sorry.
on 90. So those kind of things obviously are out of our control. So we did whittle some of that out. Okay, go ahead, Kyle.
Excellent. So next slide really is just we want to, I guess, witness kind of council discussion, development of priorities. And so as you'll see on the screen, so last year council had developed these 5 priorities: nonprofit, business, residents, technology, public facilities, and infrastructure. And what we want as a staff, and myself in particular, is just to start this discussion where we can try to identify certain priorities that maybe we can move on sooner rather than later, and really what direction council wants to take regarding these funds. This is a very open-ended discussion. These funds are unprecedented, and so we're all really grappling with, how we want to prioritize expenditures, of these funds really for the first time. So, so with that, I would entertain any questions. Obviously, there's going to be some discussion on where we want to prioritize these funds, but really I'm going to kind of pass it off to council, entertain any questions, and then just kind of go from there.
Yeah, and so before we start in, I'll just do a quick reminder for those who are kind of new to this. So we have until the end of 2024 to allocate the funds, and until the end of 2026 to spend them. So, and again, I know it's hard. It's hard to know how hard to push that gas pedal on these kind of things. And also there had been the previous discussion about using these funds on things that would not create ongoing operating costs. Like there was a answer on there about adding police officers. That'd be great for the couple of years that we could fund them, but then how do we fund them after that? Do we have to let them go, or how do we pay for that? So just kind of keep those things top of mind, that we don't want to fund something that we can't continue to fund after the money's gone. So just with those reminders, take comments and questions. Who wants to start? Councilmember Spencer.
That list that was just up on the screen that was talked about in 2021, was that in any particular order?
No, they were based on a strategic plan.
Okay.
That's where we're done.
Kyle, could you remind me in its inception, when we were introduced to ARP for municipal, I believe there was a certain set of statements or instructions regarding what it would be allowed to, and then that changed over time. Could you remind me what that was?
Absolutely. So yeah, there were 4 pillars, as you would call them, of allowable funding for this initial disbursement for ARP funds and for the CARES Act funds that were dispersed in 2020 as well. First and foremost was to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. Second was to mitigate the negative economic impacts of COVID-19. Third was to provide premium pay for essential workers. Fourth was necessary improvements in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. And so that was our initial, what they called the U.S. Treasury's interim final rule, had highlighted those 4 pillars. As they discussed, and there was 6 or 8 months between that interim final and the actual final rule. And the final rule essentially created this clause where ARP funds can now, if you elect the standard allocation, can be used for general government expenditures. And so that essentially widened that window from those 4 categories to any conceivable government operation or expenditure going forward. So that opened the door for all of these separate discussions in this broadening of allowable expenditures.
Great. I'd reflect on our intent, I'd say collectively, to spend these dollars on, I'll call it non-recurring, and I'm going to say one-time or infrastructure related. I think when I think to the spirit of the action, support from federal level for municipal governments, that to me is what I think it's to be best spent for. I reflect on our work in comparison to the other efforts of the federal government in support of COVID response, specifically the federal government's payroll protection plan with respect to impacts in small business. That the federal government has gone to great lengths actually to provide significant benefits to the employer, I'll call it, a private employer in support. So that, it's a component of that when I think about what the municipal government's benefit to its communities should be. So thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I'll jump in. Thank you, Mayor. Can you go back to the slide of the information that was shared on feedback? Yes, that one there. Thank you. So as I look over the list, I would echo what Councilmember Dunn said. I'm in favor of a capital facilities purpose or type of a purpose for these funds. But for me, and I've said this before, in my mind, it really should be something that can benefit the majority or as many of our residents as possible. And as I look at this list on here, and while they're all important, it's obviously a good example of we're not going to please everybody with whatever we do here, right? So as I look at all those different projects, those are things that we could add to our down the road list of wants and needs, and that's great feedback for that. But again, like the mayor said, we don't need to allocate these funds until 24 and spend them until 26. So again, the biggest impact for me should be the majority of the residents. So one of the things I'm surprised is not on here because it's been talked about for years is a community center. And as I've thought about that over the time, and what surprises me is where the library is on that list. Not certainly at the top, but it's getting some strong feedback that there's a desire there. So, and I've shared this with a few of you, but I'll just throw it out and see what everybody thinks. In my mind, we're sitting in the best community center right now that we could offer. Because this building, if you walk through this building, the layout of this building is perfect for different events at the same time. Because of the size of the rooms, you have this big area, you could expand that out for bigger functions. But the two wings are really, if you've gone through, am I right? Am I saying the rooms are small? No, they're good sized.
Yeah, the offices are what, about 10 by 10 or 8 by 8?
I guess my point is some of those could be modified to bigger areas, bigger rooms. There's plenty of restroom facilities here. The only thing that might be lacking a little bit is some parking. And there's obviously been a desire or a discussion about doing something with more space for the library. And of course, if we move City Hall out of this building, then it would need a new home as well. And there's been discussions in the past about a different building, not a brand new one, but a different building that could house City Hall and the library. With the idea that you would have somebody that could greet whoever at the front door and direct them in the right direction and save some operational costs that way. So I don't know if that tickles anybody's fancy here, but for me, I would like to see us use these funds on something that is really big picture, that these dollars, these $2.5 million could accelerate some of those things that I think our residents have been asking for in regards to capital facilities. Thank you.
Next. Oh, it was a tie.
No, go ahead, Tom.
Councilmember Solberg.
Thank you. First of all, kudos to the Community Engagement Commission and David for starting it off. And I've been there for most of those Saturdays, and it was really an open chart. Chris, when they started off, there was no agenda for people. And then out of it, I know David took the feedback and created the lists. I got to listen to a lot of the answers, and I know Chris did too, and I think Jed did the other day too. I had an awful lot of people that said, well, where do you think it should be spent? And I didn't answer that question because I like the idea of using it where it's going to do the most good for the most citizens. But we have one emergent need that's flashing in my head, and it's the Public Works building. And it will benefit every citizen in the area. And
if we wait until 2024, 2026, we might not be able to afford that building. Maybe we'll get $40,000 worth of interest on our money, but the costs are doing nothing but going up. So from the discussions, which included everything that was up there that I heard, I think that the highest priority should be given to using it as a major funding source for the public works building, and then seeing what we have left over for the future. For right now, we have an emergent need that would benefit all the citizens. Thanks.
Councilmember Cargill, you're up. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have a couple of things. One, you know, I was listening to Councilmember Froyer's kind of a position on this, and I agree that I think it should be going to the location that impacts the most amount of people. But I do want to lay out one caveat to this, and that is that I don't think that this is our money. I mean, I think this is the citizens' money. And so when I'm looking at what we should be spending it on, especially in an economy the way that it is right now, I want to see us, at least this is my personal view, I want to see us have the, I guess I'd call it the strength and the ability to perhaps take a look at, in one way or another, getting some of this relief directly to citizens. So I guess, Kyle, I have a scenario I want to throw out here, and tell me if it's something that's plausible. And that is, if we decided as a council to use a chunk of this money to fund, let's say, Project A in the budget, could we then use, and I believe this is what we said when we approved this, the standard position that we took a couple of meetings ago, could we use the savings for that to either lower tax or the utility tax or a tax rebate of some sort? Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? So we don't use the money directly for that purpose. We use it for one of the purposes in the general fund, but then we use the difference to try to get the money back to citizens.
Understood. And are you thinking like on a very temporary, there's a sunset on whatever relief that we provide,
right,
and then we reinstate whatever current tax rate? Because I can absolutely investigate that. I would say that the answer, our default answer should be yes until we hear otherwise.
Okay.
So, general government services is truly, I mean, anything and everything. So.
Okay, and then I guess my second point, just to follow up on a topic that was brought up just a couple of minutes ago, and that is one of the reasons, from my understanding, that we were pushing ahead on Trailhead, and the feedback that we got on Trailhead was that we needed more community space. And so if we really do need more community space, as Phil mentioned, it seems to me that this room would be the perfect place for that community space if it were a little bit larger. I know there's been talk about going out on the patio and things like that. But I would certainly like to see it to where we could expand this room so that the enormous crowds that we get, well, maybe not tonight, but the enormous crowds that we sometimes get will have more space. The council would have more space. The community would have more space and be able to use this room whenever they'd like, in addition to the room that we'll have at Trailhead. So those are my comments. And I'll just leave it at that.
All right, Councilmember Kurtz.
I'll echo kind of what everybody else said about, I really would like one of our focuses to be on providing the most expansive impact for residents. So the most bang for our buck, where the most residents can benefit from that. Similar to what other people have said in a different way, I think that there needs to be some focus on visible versus invisible assets that we have. I mean, I think the roads they're visible, but people kind of take for granted that our roads are really nice, versus say doing something with City Hall, which would be a more visible and tangible asset. one of the things that I was thinking about when Kyle was talking was that one of the pillars and the functions of this money when it was first envisioned was to offset the impacts of COVID. And I think one of the biggest impacts, consistent with what Councilmember Sahlberg said, is the great expense that we are now putting for the public works yard because of time and supply chains, and a lot of that has to do with just the impacts of COVID. So I feel like Trailhead, not Trailhead, but the public works yard would be a good way to spend some of the money. Trailhead, I think that there were a couple of options there with the undergrounding of the water and redoing the sewer line. It's an interesting idea to also, I think it's been brought forward using some of this funding to invest in Trailhead so that we don't have to finance as much. I don't know that I'm totally sold on that idea. I think the idea of the public works yard, for the same reasons that Councilmember Sahlberg brought forward, that it's an actual need, and it is a need now, makes some sense to me. Listening to Mayor Pro Tem talk about the City Hall and what we could do there, and the commingling of the library and the city, and the economic savings possibly that could come from that. I had sort of forgotten. It reminded me of all the work that we did and all the conversations we had about one of the particular locations in town. And when I think about this building, for me, I think that is a long-term investment for our City Hall and it build out. I feel like, from my perspective, I feel like we need at some point a different location. I just don't know that this building without a lot of renovation will ultimately meet the needs of the citizens 25 years down the road. So I'm still open to that idea, because I think with the dollar figures that Kyle has here, there would also be a significant down payment if you were on at least the amount that we had talked about, I think 2 years ago. So I don't know that I have I mean, I think I rambled a little bit about just kind of what everybody else is talking about, but I do want to do more than one project. I don't want to spend it all in one place. I do, even though we've had, I think, good community outreach at the farmers market and on social media, I would like to cast a wider net with the feedback. I think we've got to be just doing a little bit more in that area to really engage potentially a statistically significant sample of our population in order to have a real good idea of what a good cross-section of the citizens want. So I don't know how we can do that. The bot exchange, we've talked about that before. That is what the city of Spokane used. I know that they're looking at doing a demo here, I think, with the Community Engagement Commission sometime soon, but if not bot exchange, something and something soon, so that, because that takes a while to ramp up. It takes a while to get the feedback, and then it will take a while to get things going. So I don't want us to see, the 2024 data is really far out there because it's going to go in a blink. So I really want to just make sure that we're continuing to reach out to residents. We had a good start with what we have here. We've got some good ideas, but I do want to see more community input. Small businesses, I think that there were several opportunities for people to capitalize on some of the other funding that was available. But I don't know that it hit all of our businesses here. I know childcare was hit pretty hard. There are probably a few other businesses that were hit pretty hard too, and I don't know that everybody in town applied for those funds. So I think my biggest focus would be on the public works yard, and then figuring out if City Hall here is where we need to be, or if we do need to be looking at something else.
Great. All right, back to start. Anybody wants to jump in again?
Yeah, I'd like to offer a few opinions. I think at the end of the day, we've got, when we pool all the funds that we have available, we're talking about, what are we going to do with that? What projects do we have already in process? What projects are we looking at into the future? We've obviously got Trailhead that we're pretty far along in the process. I would have been looking at the public works yard before that. So I agree with Councilmember Solberg that, you know, that is a need that we have right at the moment. And so, you know, I guess I just have to kind of ask myself, all right, if we don't have enough to fund everything that we're wanting right now, let's start with the needs first. So I would definitely say we should put a large portion of these funds towards that particular project. But then, and if we don't, you know, completely fund that with these funds, then, you know, we're looking at going into debt to pay for this trailhead project. And I personally am not in favor of going into debt for a project. I mentioned this in my interview that, you know, talking about Dave Ramsey and, you know, Christmas coming every year, you know, we knew that Trailhead would need renovations at some point. So I feel like the time to start preparing for that would have been in the past. We're all here fairly new, and, you know, that there's nothing we can do about that. So we're having to take some sort of action now to get the parking lot up to code, the building up to code. So, you know, if we're going to keep that property and keep it moving forward, and we're going to move forward on this project, I feel like the least amount of debt that we can go into for that project would be ideal. So I would say my top priorities, even though a lot of these things would be amazing, you know, doing some of these, you know, moving things around with City Hall, I feel like the Public Works building, and then maybe putting some of that money towards Trailhead. We got a lot of feedback from the public that that's really what they want. I guess my concern really is if we go out to the public and say, well, what do you want? We're asking about what their wants are. You know, there's nothing sexy about a public works building, you know, if we're being honest. So nobody's going to put that at the top of their list, but that is a need that we have as a city. That's a core function of government. So that would be my top priority.
Anybody else? Mayor Pro Tem.
I'll jump back in. Thank you. I guess I'm a little confused on the Public Works building. I thought we recently approved that we were moving forward with that.
We did.
And I thought Kyle said we have the money today to do it. Is that true, Kyle?
We do. We just needed some additional funds from general fund and yet to be identified officially on. So what I was going to do is bring back a budget amendment based on council feedback when the time came.
Correct. But it was my understanding when we took that vote that we had the money in the general account, not.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah,
Not allocated for anything else.
correct.
So I guess while I understand where everybody's coming from on that, it is a priority. I feel like we have the money to do that. So I don't see that that's taking funds from the ARP needs to go to that because we have the funds for it. You're just swapping dollars. If we don't use $1 million of the ARP funds and we use $1 million of our own general funds, it's the same, no matter which way you look at it. So, and then I guess my other comment would be on the in response to Councilmember Cargill's comment on some taxpayer refunds, that kind of thing. I've thought a lot about all this, and the problem I see with businesses or individual tax rebates, or is it based on usage? It's not equitable across the board. Here's how we can impact you. Because some businesses use a lot more, some residents use a lot more. So I don't feel like that's a good way to help our residents when it's not fair and equitable across the street. I understand it's taxpayers' money, but some taxpayers pay more than others. So
Are you specifically talking utility tax?
in however you want to say, it's the taxpayers' money. It's federal taxes. So people pay federal taxes.
Right.
We don't have state income tax, but we all pay federal tax. So my point is everybody is at a different position in that regard. So to come back and say, we're just going to do a tax rebate of some kind, I don't know what it would be, to me is not fair enough based on how the feds have received it and how we could give it back. Just my thoughts. And the same with the businesses. Yeah, I was one of them. I took some PPP money, and there was many opportunities for every business in the city to get PPP monies more than once. So I don't know that that's for me. I'm a business owner. I don't know that that's probably a high priority. Maybe even for some of our, you've talked to some of the business owners and most of them probably said, yep, we took advantage of the PPP program and off to the races we went. So I feel like that part of the equation is past. It's in our rearview mirror. I don't hear a lot of businesses other than saying they can't find workers. I don't hear them saying that they're struggling for funds and looking to the government for help. So for me, if we don't have to spend this money for 4 years, if you look at our capital facility plan 6 years out, after the next 2 years, it's not very heavy. It's pretty light actually compared to what we've just experienced by a lot. So in my mind, if we could, let's say, let's just say we took every bit of it and we say we're going to use it in down the road, and our goal is going to be to match those funds so we can have some sort of a home run project for the city. And I don't know what that is, but I'm just thinking this is an opportunity to do something really nice and special that will impact our residents, whether it be roads or whether it be buildings, or I don't know what it is exactly, but that's just my thoughts.
Councilmember Solberg.
Good thoughts, Bill. Let me just ask, Kyle, my understanding of the question of the public works being fully funded was that we could use our surplus funds to meet what we had for the anticipated need. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. So there are reserves essentially.
So if I'm following, then what the ARPA funds would do would be, they would become an even bigger surplus for us to use. Am I following you?
Yeah, and if we can delay using them,
As opposed to
once we
spending
get
it all
past
now.
these big projects now,
Yeah.
and then the assuming that the economy doesn't get any much worse than it currently is, but all the projections I'm hearing or seeing, I mean, if you look around town, there's a lot of businesses coming, and it's REIT, it's sales tax. I mean, our city's growing. So to me, we should be able to build up general fund reserves, not just rainy day reserves, match these funds. And who knows what we could do with some of the other programs out there at TIF and whatever with matching funds. So I don't know what the answers are, but I just think I'd like to see this council really think big picture here on how can we most impact the city.
Well, I could get on board with where you're going with that. Because it really does go back to how is it going to be best used by all of the people.
Right.
If we get that public works project moving, and I know we're moving slowly ahead, but if we get it so that we don't end up getting dinged with another $1 million in overages, and we use the ARPA funds for a reserve, for a surplus to replenish that surplus that we're going to be using if we pay for the public works building, then that makes good sense.
So one other thought that I didn't share, I forgot about, is you think about, I thought somebody said not too long ago, we're projected to be at build out or maximum capacity sooner than I think we've all originally were thinking. Is it like 12 or 15 years?
Originally, I think it was 2040.
It
Lisa,
was.
where are we now? Is it 2030 or 35? Do we know?
2030 is only, yeah.
Tomorrow.
So it was originally early 2040s. And again, I don't have a good projection as to, it does appear that we are moving much quicker than that. But again, until, and that's based upon pipeline projects. Until we see those moving forward, I don't think I can give a really accurate projection. So, but yes, it does seem like with what we have in the pipeline, it's feeling like very likely that it'll be the 2030s when we hit build out, and that's not all that far from now.
All right. So even if I can follow up, even 10, 12 years from now, we're going to have demand for from the police department. we have said previously in this room that the library is not broken today, but it will be at some point in the future. Right? And again, I think I look at the city hall and how we're using this building. Is it the best use of this building? I'm sure they get, I'm sure whoever works on that end of the building gets a lot of steps to talk to anybody on that. And I'm sure you have intercoms, but my point is the police department is going to be looking to expand. The library wants to expand. I think we had a conversation that said if we decided not to leave this building, leave City Hall here, it was good until the end. I remember, but maybe I've.
There's a point where we're going to,
Right.
we won't need any additional city hall type employees because we'll be at that build out
That
point and we'll be
point,
good.
right, exactly. So I guess all I'm asking is think about if we as the ask or the request or the demands of the residents come forward, not tomorrow or next year or the year after, but 8-10 years out, how are we going to accommodate that? So I would say let's use these funds to look at how we can get closer to those objectives. I could easily see the police department taking over that whole building and then they're good to build out. Fair?
Or the library can take it over and the PD can move.
But if you've been in their side, it's pretty cool. They've got it set up really nice. But that's my point is yes, the library wants more space. We all want things in this world, but I'm just thinking we should be thinking bigger picture with these funds.
Councilmember Cargill, and then I've got a couple things to throw in there.
Thanks, Mayor. I agree that we should be putting some of this money into savings. I think any money that we get into the city, we should be putting into savings, and it's good to have that extra cash set aside. I think the whole situation, as Councilmember Foyer pointed out, with the public works yard is that it's kind of like a shell game saying we're gonna instead of using the money that we were talking about 2 weeks ago, now we're going to use this money, but then that means the other money is still available. And so, I mean, it's kind of like 6 one way, half dozen the other. You know, I respectfully disagree, Phil, that we can't or shouldn't try to figure out a way to get this back into the hands of citizens, or at least a chunk of it. I'm not saying the entire part, but at least a chunk of it in one way or another. I think the average citizen, especially ones that are struggling in the economy, are, you know, maybe they're not listening right now because it doesn't look like we have a ton of people on right now, but if they heard this conversation, they'd be saying, well, it's nice the city's going to have an extra $2.5 million in an account. What does that mean for me? And to me, it means that part of that money should be spent on giving it back to the citizens. Now, there are a bunch of different ways you can do that. We talked about the utility tax. We've talked about that many times. Other states and some other cities I've seen are doing like $100 rebate checks or whatever. And that might not seem like a large amount, but you know, to the single mom of 2, that might be enough to fill her gas tank for a week or 2. So anyways, that's kind of what I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
I just want to jump in if I may. Trevor, can you go back to the one slide that had kind of the different asks to it? When you bring them up, I'll tell you which one I'm looking for. No, there's one that had some, there you go. Let me make it a little bit bigger on my screen so I can see. So I personally, I think there's some low hanging fruit I would love for you guys to consider. You know, we did the initial disbursement of almost $270,000 to the local nonprofits for 2020. Well, 2021 was also a struggle for the nonprofits. And we had asked them, you know, they submitted some preliminary numbers for for funds that they would have normally raised in 2021, but weren't able to. So yeah, I would love, you know, again, low hanging fruit. It probably won't be as much as 270, but you know, there are nonprofits that still need some help recovering from 2021, you know, and, you know, I know, you know, Winter Glow, you know, it fully support them. I know they're going to make an ask, you know, I know the Rotary's down. I'm sure Kiwanis was down. And even Ridgeline High School, this is not an effect from 2020 or 2021, but I know the band boosters, you know, really struggle with getting some of the startup stuff that they need for their band because the school can't provide for instance, a trailer for their band equipment. So they're probably going to be making ask, those things, the water line replacement at Trailhead, that's another thing, it's infrastructure. We have an opportunity to do it really cheap right now. We pretty much said, yeah, we're going to do it. But the question is, are we going to officially say, yeah, we're going to use the ARPA money for it? And then, just a couple other, again, low hanging fruit that I think you guys should maybe consider, maybe even if we just started off with opening it back up for applications for the nonprofits to see where they are. Maybe they were able to rebound this year and they don't need to make up for any of that 2021. But, we had initially talked to them about that initially, and the council decided we're going to start with 2020 and revisit 2021. So again, those small things. I'm looking on here, parks, new drinking fountains and trash receptacles. Yeah, that's something we probably can put in the normal budget, but it probably won't take priority if we can kick, $60,000 to it for, and think COVID, we don't have the water fountains at Town Square Park are not on, because it's the one you dip down, you pretty much put your mouth on it, they're off. So, they've got the neat ones like we have here at City Hall where you can put your water bottle under it and you don't have to touch it. Those to me are COVID things that we can still improve on. So just food for thought for the council. I know it's going to be an ongoing conversation, but just, kind of consider some of those things that we might be able to knock off pretty quickly and easily.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Kyle, just a real quick question so I can make sure I understand. You were suggesting that the interest based on what we're hearing from the Fed on this is likely to double over the 21,000 per year that we're expected to get now, right?
Yeah.
So, let's just say we don't make a decision on this until next year. We'll have another 42-ish thousand. And
Yep.
if we're to wait until the very end of when this would have to be spent, which is 26, is that right?
Yeah.
So, we'd have another, 250,000 or so, is that right?
Yeah, just kind of depending, it'll fluctuate, probably not quite that much. I would say, yeah, not too far, maybe 200,000 or so.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, Councilmember Dunn.
Just to follow up to that question, Kyle, the word allocation with respect to a 2024 deadline, could you clarify that, please?
So allocation or committed, so we have until 2024 to commit the funds. And so that would be really what would be a capital project or something that is going to take multiple years potentially to fulfill and actually expend those dollars. So December 31st, 2024, all of the money that we have that we received from the federal government for ARPA has to have a home. And it can't live in any reserves or anything like that. It has to be spent. And so it has to be allocated. I apologize. And then obviously December 31st, 2026, it does have to be spent or they're going to come grab it from us. So.
One of the clarification on the slide that you had presented, it included a note regarding a request for assistance from Liberty Lake Sewer and Water District. Could you explain just a little bit more about that objective, Kyle?
So for the cybersecurity upgrades?
Yeah.
So I will send that out. And so we had an initial call. We reached out to a couple of the area utilities and then SNAP as well. And so I will send that request to council for consideration. And it's essentially, I want to say it was in the neighborhood of 30 to 40,000. But it had a pretty wide net, I think, all the way up to a much bigger number for full integration. I think they were just looking for some assistance.
Sure. I'll speak in reference. We're in a unique situation as a municipal that doesn't operate a water utility. Traditionally, throughout communities, we as a city would be delivering that. I recognize the operations of Liberty Lake Sewer and Water District is important to the members of our community and the citizens of our city. And so I'm actually in support of consideration of the water utility as one of the possible beneficiaries of the actions of this ARP distribution. Thanks.
And that's a great point, Councilmember Dunn. All the meetings and both at NLC and AWC and, some of the other seminars that both Kyle and I have attended, we are in a very fortunate position that we don't have utilities of any kind. Because that's where these smaller towns, even Medline Falls, I spent 6 hours in the car with the mayor from Medline Falls, they have their own treatment facility. It's a very interesting process that they use up there, but a city of 1,700 people has to run their own water and sewer. So we are in a very fortunate position that we haven't had to spend it on that. So great point about helping them out. And a note on broadband, I know that was one of the pillars, but just a reminder that we do have the bipartisan infrastructure bill coming out, and a lot of that money is being put toward broadband. So what we don't want to do with these funds is use the money from ARPA if it's going to be covered by the those funds in the bipartisan infrastructure bill. So I know Kyle's watching that very closely. There was a lovely 3-hour webinar that I watched on recording on Friday. Very, very interesting, but lots more to come. Not everything is carved out. So
One last comment if I
Yeah.
can, Mayor. There's no good way to say this, so I'll just say it. I'm not in favor of spending another dime on anything else other than a capital facilities project. For me, when I see that list, yes, it's 50,000 here, 60,000 there, it's 100,000 there. It's like building a house. You keep adding stuff. They're little things, but at the end of the day, they're a big number. And we've already given out previously, how much was it, Kyle? 500,000?
Correct. Yep. In total, we've spent 500,000. Nonprofits received 270,000 last year.
The reason why I'm saying it is, since that first initial wave of dealing with COVID, and we helped the nonprofits and we helped whoever the $500,000 worth that we helped, there are other places to get funds if they are needed, other than the ARP fund. So for me, I'd like to see us save it for the big home run project. Thank you.
point to hand.
Just
Yeah.
one quick comment.
Councilmember Spencer, then Councilmember Cargill, and then we've got a break.
Sounds good. So it sounds to me like because of the fact that we can't just leave the fund sitting there, if we want to turn that into a savings, we do have to apply it to some project that we've already committed some funds so that we can basically convert them into something, some sort of savings. So it seems like if we are gonna say, let's kick the can down the road and start saving for another project, we do have to commit those to something now or in the next couple of years, so that those funds that we've already allocated, already planned on, that we're not, converting into more debt.
One of the things I was going to mention that's not on this list, or any list that's come forward, but I think is important, is trying to recognize the history of the community. And we don't really have, if you think about the community, we don't really have any place in the community that, or really anything in the community that says, okay, this is a historical marker. This is a bust of Stephen Liberty, or or whatever. I mean, there are many different ways you can go about doing this that are kind of artistic related as well, that I think would add a little bit of a life and preservation to the community that we might want to think about, maybe not for ARP money, but other monies down the road. Thank you.
All right, guys, we've got a little over 7 minutes before 7, so we'll go ahead and take our break, and we'll be back at 7 o'clock for our regular meeting. All right, so welcome everybody to our Tuesday, July 5th, 2022 City Council meeting. We are in person here at City Hall, still with a remote option for our citizens. We will go ahead and start off with our invocation given by new council member Spencer, and then followed by our Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us.
Father in heaven, we are grateful unto thee this beautiful day. We're grateful for this beautiful city that we have to live in and for this community that we enjoy. We're so thankful for the chance that we've had over this past weekend to celebrate our country's independence and for the wonderful freedoms that we enjoy in our country and including here in this city. We're thankful for thy many blessings and for the opportunities that we have to connect with one another as a community. We pray that thou will bless us this evening, that we may be inspired as to the decisions we make together as a council and as we hear feedback from the community, and pray that thou will help us to seek thy will in these actions. And these things we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty, well. Call the meeting to order here. All right, we'll go ahead and take a quick roll call. Councilmember Cargill,
Present.
Councilmember Kurtz,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Foliar,
Here.
Councilmember Spencer.
Here.
Councilmember Dunn,
Happy to be here.
Councilmember Solberg.
Here.
All right, and do we have a motion to excuse Councilmember Van Orman?
Madam Mayor, I move we excuse Councilmember Van Norman.
Great, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and second to excuse Councilmember Van Orman for family reasons. Do we have all in favor of excusing? Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have excused Councilmember Van Orman. All right, we'll go on to agenda approval.
Yes, Mayor, again.
Yep.
Yep, I have one amendment to make for your consideration. I would like to add interlocal agreement between the City of Liberty Lake Police Department and the Spokane Valley Fire Department under General Business 11C.
And do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Councilmember Dunn. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, agenda is amended.
Thank you, Mayor. Make a motion to approve the amended agenda as previously identified.
Second.
We have a second by Councilmember Cargill. Any objections? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 6-0. All right, we are up to citizen comments. So this is a time when we give our citizens up to 3 minutes each to make a comment on any topic. So if you're here in chambers and want to make a comment, there are yellow forms on the table as you come in, just fill that out. Remember, you have 3 minutes and it is comment only. So if there's anything we need to follow up on, we'll make sure we have your contact information. And for those on Zoom, if you could just send a note in chat to Trevor, our meeting host for today, he will let me know that you are in line. And just remember, you'll have an opportunity at the end of the meeting to do the same. Okay, not seeing any. And I think I recognize everybody in the audience. So, all right. So hearing no citizen comments, we will come back to that at the end of the meeting. So we're up to announcements, proclamations, and special presentations. We have Northwest Municipal Advisors for our update on public versus private financing options for trailhead improvements. Ryan, are you our spokesperson today?
I am, and I'm joined by my colleague Scott Bauer as well.
Wait, welcome.
Great. And I'll share my screen very briefly. I think it should be just a very brief update from our last meeting where we, I think, went a little bit more into depth about the process of financing the capital project. But let me pull my screen up and we'll just give a quick update from what we talked about last time. So what we looked at, I guess, since the last meeting, we talked to a number of banks as well as looking at the public markets to get a handle on really where rates were in the two methods of financing. So we looked at a $6 million financing, $500,000 would be taxable, $5.5 million would be tax exempt, 20 years and level debt service. As of last week, when we acquired these rates, the bank rates were about 1% less than the public markets on that 20-year financing, which does equate to about $30,000 to $50,000 less based on this particular analysis to go bank route versus a public market route. And generally, I think when our conversations with the city, banks do tend to have a variety of prepayment options that would be accessible to the city down the road if the city chose to prepay on the project earlier, if that became an option. So what our plan is to assemble and distribute a bank RFP in a couple of months, and then we'll really get feedback back from those banks to see, what their prepayment options are, what the actual rates that they're providing are. And then move forward from there. Foster will be preparing a delegation bond ordinance that will come to the to the council in August for reading, review, and vote. It will be, written in a way that should allow flexibility, that if the market was to change and the city wanted to go in a different direction toward the public markets, as opposed to going the bank route, we would be able to do that very quickly. And this is our overall, I guess, of the, our timeline here for the next couple of months. So we'll be working with bond counsel in the city to prepare that delegation bond ordinance throughout the month of July here. In August, we'll begin to prepare the RFP. You'll have the readings of the ordinance at your 2 meetings in August. And then once we know the full dollar amount, the GMP confirmation for the sizing of the deal, then we'll be able to send the RFP out to the banks for, as well as, I guess, the city's contribution to the project as well, to send that out to the banks to get accurate rates and term sheets from the banks for financing. Looking to, receive those responses in late September and then close it in October. And so at this point, looks, the way the rates look right now looks like the direction that we'd want to go is through the bank route. And I'm open to any questions or comments.
Any questions? Going once? I'm not even going to go any farther. It doesn't look like there's any questions from the council.
All right. Well, great. Well, thank you. And we'll give updates as we move down the path.
Great. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you very much.
Right. Okay. All right. Next on our agenda is reports and inquiries. Do we have any city council reports? Councilmember Dunn.
Hey, I just want to have a shout out of thanks to the great city staff that supported last night's event at Pavilion Park as a participant volunteer, staffing the concession stand, looking out at the teeming hordes. It was a great time had by all. I think that from the perspective of the Kiwanis group that was staffing the concession stand, that was busy the whole time. We ran out of everything. But to just be able to support the community and provide for the community, and then just, to see the community at large enjoying the moment was great. So thanks.
Great. Any other council reports? Councilmember Solberg.
Our finance director invited us to the first auditors meeting, and I participated in it, learned a lot, and I look forward to the report afterwards. We had done state audits with a parole board back in the day, and city audits are much different. So it's a good learning process. And then also on the 28th, a member, the chair, Robin from the Citizen Engagement Committee, and myself met with the Glenbrook neighbors that were here at the last city council meeting, and we have a follow-up meeting with them. And we're working towards a resolution of the issues.
Great. Thank you very much. Who else? Councilmember Spencer.
Yeah, my family and I attended the 622 event for the summer reading kickoff for the library over at Ridgeline High School with the Zaniac, and it was quite entertaining and well attended. So props to Jandy and the crew.
Right. Anybody else? All right. Okay. All right. I guess I'm next. So just following Dan again. Yesterday was amazing. First, the golf cart and bicycle parade in the rain down at Alpine Shores, well attended as usual. And we were very pleased given the weather, how many people turned out. And then at the park last night, I was sitting down kind of in the bowl as usual. And then I decided to wander up toward the golf carts. And I'm just always so amazed at how packed that North Field has gotten over the last several years of doing the band and the fireworks. I think we probably had another record crowd. I would love to see if anybody got any drone video. If not, we need to arrange for that for next year. So well done, staff. Well done, Kiwanis. And I'm so glad you guys took over with those events. I look forward to a great summer. I'll touch a little bit on the AWC conference. I got to know Councilmember Betsy Wilkerson from Spokane City Council, and like I said before, the mayor of Medellin Falls, because my flight back from Portland was canceled last Friday. So they wanted to send the two of them to Boise to stay the night and then back to Spokane, and they were going to have me stay in Portland and then come in the next morning. So I found them. I said, you want to split a car? And so we hopped in the car and spent 6 hours together, 3 women who didn't really know each other, and we learned a lot. So great ending to the week. Just of note, lots of great sessions this time. Sometimes I find myself, there might be a session or two where there's none to choose from that I might be interested in. I won't run through all of them, but the ones of note, was really excited about going to the private-public partnerships. It was packed and they closed the doors 5 minutes before it started. So I wasn't able to go to that one, but I do have the slides. I'm going to be following up on that. We did talk about crisis communications. I'm going to set up a meeting with David Gaynor here, probably in the next couple of weeks. They talked about setting up your crisis communication plans, which we really don't have. When we had the water issue back in 2019, we don't have a go-to plan for getting information out early and often and to the citizens. So that's something we can work on. 2 hours with actually a great 2 hours on the First Amendment considerations for government social media. So this has nothing to do with public records requests or Open Public Meetings Act, but First Amendment considerations. And I think we do a really good job with this. We don't block comments, we don't delete comments, but there are certainly things that we can learn. And we were provided with a boilerplate 3-page city policy, not necessarily for elected officials, but for the city running their social media pages on how we handle things. And so again, that's something I'll be following up with David on. And there was also a sample of social media policy for elected officials. And I know there were some people getting together on that. It kind of fell by the wayside with all of our changes. So this sample that we have may actually solve that piece of the problem. So I'll be getting that out to you guys. And then another great session on advocating for cities, both in the legislative session and year round. So always great information, always learning something from AWC. So I think that's it for me today. City Administrator report.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. We'll kick it off with David Williams, our engineer, on road construction updates. David?
I did it again. I was on mute. Sorry about that. Okay, yeah, good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and all citizens of Liberty Lake. Thank you for tuning in right now. Just really quick before I begin, I want to thank all the questions that we've received on Facebook regarding the road closure on Kramer Parkway. I'm trying to do my best to answer these questions in as much detail as possible. So if you have more questions, David will send them over my way, and then I will respond as well to a city engineer. So this is the agenda that I'm going to go over quite quickly here. The first point will be, next slide, please, Trevor. This is a Country Vista signal project. The pole construction is scheduled for July 18th, and that is still moving forward. The end date is supposed to be August 19th. Please pay attention, though, we do have some delivery issues for materials. So we all know that the supply chain is actually having some pretty big issues with construction. So just kind of know that we are still working on the project. It's still an active work site, but we are allowing traffic through there without issue. Next slide, please. This is the Legacy Ridge to Green Acres or Country Vista detour routes. It's marked in yellow. The yellow area is actually the county, I'm sorry, it is Spokane Valley's detour route from Sprague all the way to get you to Apple Way. And the right side of the picture is the Legacy Ridge Drive intersection with the circle. This also is the other preferred detour route. Both construction areas you see are in the red circles, the Kramer Rehab Project, and you see the Sprague Barker Runabout Project. Again, we had a detour route that was set in place to assist, but there were some issues that we were having with traffic control and then weight limits restrictions as well. And we were really actually quite concerned too about the students who are in the area walking along Kramer. So walking along that North Henry Lane. So we did need to close that route down. Okay, next slide, please. Pay attention soon, the left lane closure for Trailhead Golf Course. The construction will be underway soon as they do more excavation. They do a little bit more compaction. So that roadway, you'll see a 25-mile-per-hour reduction. I'm sorry, it'll be reduced to 25 miles per hour in that one right lane. It will be taken and then it will be done potentially through construction. Next slide, please. This again is the detour route around the Mission Avenue roundabout construction. You see the yellow arrows, they take you along Harvest to Indiana, and then you can actually get back to Bitter Roots and then the Mission over to Harvard as well too. We want to make sure that everyone knows that we're asking people to just please abide by the stoppage and the closure and just use the detour as planned. Next slide, please. And we're also asking too that pedestrians not use the trails along Mission Avenue and Kramer as well. I get questions all the time about, if the construction zone is open because people don't see any construction work, those zones actually are closed, and we're asking people not to walk on them just for your safety. So if you don't see construction work, but you see barricades up, it is an active construction zone, and it actually is quite dangerous for pedestrians. Next slide, please. If you have any questions, you can call me directly, and I appreciate all the people who will call me from Green Acres and Liberty Lake. That my email is right there and my phone number is right there. Please call me if you have questions anytime. Have a great day.
Hey, David, real quick, before you run away on us, can you go over the expected end dates for the Kramer reconstruction and Mission?
Yeah, both of those projects, we are projected to have them done by the beginning of the school year, September. So it's either going to be the September 2nd or it'll be September 9th. So we're hoping that we get it done by the 2nd. Again, we would rather overproduce and, than underdeliver. So those are our projected construction dates for both projects. We're trying to get them done before school begins.
Great. That's what I thought. I just want to make sure nothing had changed. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome. Any other questions?
Anybody else? No. Nope. Sounds good.
Take care, guys.
Thank you, David. Just a quick update on parks. This year being back in full force, they are truly busier than ever. I think every single day on our parks reservation calendar, if not multiple times a day, are reserved at all 3 parks. Our camps are full to the point they don't want us advertising anymore because they can't handle any more kids. So it's definitely been an interesting and a new year. And I have to say that last night, what a lot of people don't see is the collaboration behind the scenes. I mean, for example, last night between PD supporting us as city staff, the Kiwanis group, our own staff, the pyrotechnicians, traffic control, Spokane Valley Fire, Central Valley School District, and L&I doing inspections. It's really impressive for me to stand behind the scenes and in the middle of it and see everything just flowing. And yes, there are hiccups, and PD is just amazing at supporting us through some of the issues that we have, small issues, thank goodness. But it was awesome to see everything come together, and it's event after event after event that this happens. So thank you to everybody that joins us, and city staff. You guys are amazing. I mean, these would not happen without you guys. So yes, we have experienced some vandalism over the past few weeks with school letting out. It's pretty typical for us to see that when summer hits. The first couple weeks, vandalism kind of spikes. Staff has been hopping to keep those things at bay and keep the restrooms and facilities going. They've done a great job, but hopefully we're kind of settling down from that and moving on and looking forward to Touch Truck as our next event. So moving on, we'll move to Jandy Library Summer Reading.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to give you guys an update on summer reading. It's one of our biggest things that we do at the library during the year. So we've been doing it for exactly 2 weeks now. We opened it June 21st, the day after our Juneteenth holiday. And so far this year, we've had 678 people register for summer reading. We've had 174 young kids ages 0 to 5, 334 school-aged kids, about age 6 to 10, 61 teens, which is high for teens, and we've had 109 adults register for summer reading. So that's a total of 678. Last year, which we consider a COVID year, we had about 600 people register. I would say our average during, over the last 10 years for a good year is about 800. So we're over 3/4 of the way to our average participation for summer reading. So we're really thrilled. The library is really hopping. We've decorated everything in an oceans theme. The summer reading theme this year is Oceans of Possibilities. So if you haven't had a chance to stop by the library, I would urge you to. Our children's librarian and teen and adult librarian have gone all out. Me as a children's librarian in the past, I was never big on decorating, and they've gone all out. So the library looks very oceany, fishy, swimmy. So that's been really fun this year. I also wanted to invite all of the council and those who can to come to our Touch a Truck event. The library partners with operations and maintenance. Trevor Reagan has been my right-hand man for this event, and we are really excited to bring this back to Liberty Lake. We haven't been able to do it since 2019. And in 2019, our attendance at the event was around 1,000 people. So it is a huge draw. We get so many people from Liberty Lake that come to the event, and people that come from, all over the Spokane County to our event. So we would love to see you all there. It's on this next Friday, July 15th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
And Jandy, I hear that we may have a contest or two to name some of the city equipment.
Yes, Trevor is working with the streets department to have the kids sign some of the snow blades that we put on the snow trucks. And also we're going to have a contest for people to nominate names that we can name the snow plow trucks for the next season, and get the community involved and let them know like which snow plows are where when we're plowing through this this next winter season. So I think that's a genius idea, and it's going to be so much fun.
Super, looking forward to it. And it's at Orchard Park this year, right?
Yes, we normally do it at Town Square, and this will be our first year doing it at Orchard Park, which is the perfect venue.
Yep, it is. Super, thank you very much.
All right, next up, Chief Simmons.
Presentation. It's working.
While we're waiting on that, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Got some good stuff to talk about today, some things that we're doing over at the PD, but before we get to that, I want to give an award. Officer Arnold, come forth. There we go. Next slide. On June 19th, 2022, Officer Arnold responded to a medic's call at I-90 and Country Vista Drive. An adult male was reported to have passed out in a vehicle, possibly without a pulse. Upon his arrival, he found the male unconscious and non-responsive, with citizens starting CPR. Officer Arnold moved the unconscious patient to a location of safety and immediately began CPR. Officer Arnold continued CPR until relieved by Spokane Valley Fire Department personnel. The efforts of Officer Arnold and Spokane Valley Fire Department personnel led to the restoration of the patient's heartbeat, and he was transported for treatment. Witnesses reported Officer Arnold is calm, bringing a sense of order to what was otherwise a chaotic scene. Officer Arnold's dedication to duty and genuine concern for public safety resulted in a life being saved. His actions are a direct reflection of his overall professionalism and dedication to our community. We are very proud of Officer Arnold. Officer Arnold, I'd like to present to you the Liberty Lake Police Department lifesaver. I don't believe in irony, but next slide, there's some irony in this, and it actually grew when Chief Soto arrived in the parking lot and we started to talk. As law enforcement officers, we are often first at the scene of many different types of incidents, but that includes medics calls. So our officers will hear those calls and they will respond to those calls. Sometimes when we respond to those calls, because we're first there in fire or AMR or several minutes out, we ourselves have to begin life-saving measures. And so today, at the towards the end of this meeting, when you guys and ladies, as council members, vote on the things on our agenda to vote on, there's an ILA there in which we're trying to enter an agreement with the Spokane Valley Fire Department. They've been gracious enough to volunteer to give us, I think 23 AEDs. So each officer will be equipped with an automated external defibrillator. That will dramatically increase our ability to save lives. If and when, because there's going to be a when, we are first on scene to a medic's call and one's needed. So I ask that you please approve that ILA. It would be a great benefit for not only our community, but the surrounding community as well when we respond to those calls. Next slide. Our flock safety. The flock cameras have been a tremendous asset for us. They've been great. Next slide, Trevor. We have currently our first camera went up around May 9th. I think there was like a Saturday. It was a little bit of a surprise to me that when I logged on, I was monitoring to see when the first one went up, and I was like, hey, there's a camera up. And I started getting images. Right now, we have 9 active license plate readers around the city. We have 5 that's pending permits with a Vista, and I think we're just waiting on the Vista and Flock right now to get those approved and get those up. And then we have 4 pending installation. And we still have that 1 pending electrical. I think they threw it in the wrong location over at the park. Next slide. So what have we done so far? These are just a few things that we've done. Before I get to that, this is what they call a hot list. And this is just an example of some of the things that we've seen coming through the vehicle, through the city. You can see the stolen vehicles that are coming through the city. We've recovered several of those. This list it refreshes their data is only kept for 30 days. So this is just 30 days of data. So everything within the last 30 days from the time that I obtained the data. We've had a lot more than this come through, especially stolen license plates and things like that. But one of the things I wanted to point out is the gang or suspected terrorist. We have a great working relationship with our federal partners. And our federal partners, I met with the Department of Homeland Security last week. They are extremely excited that we have this, and they are willing to partner with us in their efforts to protect our community as well, to use this. So that's great. Next slide. Some examples of some success stories that we have. One of the very first success story is a hit and run to city property on May the 10th, 2022. We were able to get the information on the suspect driver. You can see there that the suspect driver was a semi. The driver was a semi driver, and we were able to go contact the company and get the ball rolling on that investigation and getting the city reimbursed for that property damage. Next slide. Another success story for us. We had several city vehicles prowled here in the parking lot here at City Hall. We were able to take the video that Trevor sent over, look at the suspect vehicle, search through the cameras. It's a pretty distinctive vehicle. So we did our search on the camera. We got a suspect, and this is still an ongoing investigation. But just to let you know, this gentleman has been terrorizing the county with property crimes. So it's great that we were able to identify him. Next slide. This was our first stolen recovery, wasn't it? Yeah, I think this was one of our first stolen recoveries. Down on South Liberty Lake Road, came through town, went south of Sprague, and we actually contacted the suspect and recovered the vehicle there. Ironically, next slide, while we were investigating that stolen vehicle south of town, this stolen vehicle comes through as we were all down there. Eastbound on Arpa Way towards Idaho. So we were able to notify Kootenai County, Post Falls, and Post Falls intercepted it, recovered the vehicle, and I don't know what happened with the suspect, but we recovered the vehicle.
Chief, do you get an alert when that happens?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Explain how that works.
So you can set, there's some settings there, and so you can set you can get an email alert, and or you can get a text message alert. So what happens is it's browser based. So the officers have, they log in and they have it up on their browsers in their computer, in their cars. So when there's an alert, you get an alarm and you can't ignore it. It's loud. So you know, oh, we just got a hit on one of the cameras based on the alarm.
That's great.
So you go over there to the hot list in the browser and you can see what's coming through.
Thank you.
Next slide. Yep. This is where you start. I don't want to steal your glory. So Sergeant Jones is going to give us an update on Detective Sergeant Jeff Jones is going to give us an update on some great things they've been doing to kind of deter a lot of our property crimes in our commercial establishments.
Thanks, Chief. Hello, Madam Mayor, City Council members. Glad to be here. This was actually a theft second that we were. Well, yeah, that's not the slide though. Basically, since I've taken over the detective unit, we've been doing some emphasis with our local businesses and stores. And we're going to continue doing that, but this was one of the things that we were able to identify the suspect through the flock system, and we referred charges on her for theft second, which is a felony. But we wouldn't have been able to do that. Witnesses gave us a plate. We entered that plate into the flock system. Identified there's some other follow-up done, but identified the RO of the vehicle, called him. We found out who our suspect was, and we went from there. Next slide.
Yeah, sorry, I got ahead of myself. And this was, I think this is a stolen license plate recovery that we had. That was pretty interesting because it was borderline criminal and borderline civil. But we were able to recover the license plate for the owner, and it was a dealer, a local dealer, car dealer. So it was a pretty interesting case, but we recovered that stolen license plate for the dealer. Next slide. And I included this one because I just wanted to show how this system branches out beyond just our area and our state. This is a stolen out of Montana, out of the east side of Montana near Billings. They had no idea who stole this. It was stolen from a hotel. It was a construction worker from Missoula, parked his vehicle there, went to sleep. The next night he came out and his vehicle was gone. No evidence whatsoever. No video surveillance footage, no suspects, nothing. They had no idea which direction the vehicle headed. So we received the hit. We searched all around for it. It was in town for a while, multiple hits all day, within probably 17, 18 hours, but we were never able to catch up with it. And so I contacted the agency, the reporting agency, and they advised us that we have no suspect information, but we can write an additional report now. We know the direction that the vehicle went, and so that allows them to do some follow-up. So not only does this, again, system help us, but it also helps other agencies as well.
He's toying with the chief.
Oh, okay. All right, next slide. There we go. Sorry.
All right. So since I've taken over the detective unit for Liberty Lake Police Department, one thing that I wanted to do was not be stagnant and wait for like felony reports to come to us. So what we've decided to do, we started working with our local businesses and stores and did some undercover stuff with loss prevention and on our own with Safeway. Each operation was 3 to 4 hours long, and the purpose of it was to reduce the number of thefts from our local businesses. We will continue these in the future, adding special emphasis, nighttime property crimes and hotspots in our city that we identify. So what we've also been doing, we've been tracking thefts, burglaries, car thefts, and vehicle prowls, and mapping them on our map in the office. So when we get a cluster, that's something that we're gonna go out nighttime and start looking at. Next slide. Okay, so far, the numbers from Home Depot. One theft second, felony arrest. Suspect was on probation from Idaho for theft. So we contacted his boss, contacted his PO, so he'll have multiple warrants in 2 different states. Also, 3 different 3rd-degree thefts, 1 felony warrant and 1 misdemeanor warrant in conjunction with the arrests. And total from Home Depot, we trespassed 5 individuals for 3 years. Next slide. Okay, the other slide from the flock presentation. This was an investigation for theft in the 2nd degree, another felony. We used the flock system and located the involved vehicle. Suspect was interviewed and case was referred to the county prosecutor's office for the felony. Also, in conjunction with the emphasis with Safeway, we also were able to arrest 6 different individuals for 3rd-degree theft or refer them to the prosecutor's office. Is there a next slide? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, members of the council. I just want to let you know that we will continue to come up with some non-traditional creative ways to combat the crime that we're starting to see around here. Because sometimes that's the only way. They know a marked police car. A good example of that is the video that we had from one of our vehicle prowls where the marked patrol car drives by and they come out of the dark. So they're watching for us. They know, so we're going to have to come up and be creative, and we're going to continue to do that. So,
I know
Yes,
we've
sir.
got some questions. Councilmember Dunn.
Chief, I want to say just thanks. What I'm most proud of and what I get to brag to people who talk about what is it like in Liberty Lake is the work that our public safety does in property crime. It stands in strong contrast and shining example of, I'd say, well handled in comparison to some of the other regions. So thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember, Mayor Pro
Yes,
Tem.
Question, Chief, thank you. On that last slide, it said at the very end, they're cited and released. What percentage of them come back?
You know, that's a good question. I can't answer that, but I can see if I can get that data from.
I mean, do you see the same faces, the same
Oh,
names?
well, I can tell you from experience, and I think everyone back here will, they will, the recidivism rate is probably pretty high. I think that we do our best part here, at least in Liberty Lake. But once they leave our custody, they enter the judicial system, that's a different beast altogether. So the accountability piece there is what we're trying to work on in the criminal justice judicial system together. So.
Excellent, thank you.
Right. Anybody else have any questions? It's fantastic work as always, and we look forward to the word getting out that we're tough and, well, you guys are already tough, but that people are getting caught, and hopefully the word will get out and just naturally some of those things will decline. Thanks, guys. All righty. Next on our agenda. Yep.
Events.
Yep.
So last up, we're peak event season. We've got several events coming up. Friends of Summer Soiree is July 13th, and several movies coming up through July, even into the very last weekend of July. And I just wanted to say, if anybody ever wonders if staff here wears many hats, I'm gonna embarrass Trevor for a second, but he's operations and maintenance, and he's been so kind to cover Todd so that Todd could actually take a vacation. And Todd is our IT. Trevor has stepped outside of his bounds, as many of our staff do on a daily basis. But I just wanted to say thank you for covering Todd and give him some relief. So it's a common thing that you'll see here within all of our staff, that we cover each other, regardless of whether we know, we just train and take it over and and help out. So thank you, Trevor. Doing a great job. That is all I have. That concludes my report if there are no questions.
All right, and we will move on to, we've got Liberty Lakes Water, Sewer and Water District, but I don't see anybody here. Do we have anybody online? Don't see anybody. Okay. All right, so I guess we can jump over to Chief Soto, Spokane Valley Fire Department. Welcome.
Good evening, council members. Good evening, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank the person that put me on the list behind the police department, since I have to try and show up that great presentation. So I'll do my best. All right, Mr. Trevor, I appreciate you here, sir. If you can, excellent. Thank you, sir. Next slide, please. All right, so for the month of June, we responded to, or we had 92 incidents that we were called out for. As you can see, the most calls that we had came from the Guardian. Next slide, please. So the total number of responses were 66. That is obviously lower than the 92, but that is mainly because of certain calls being canceled, or also fire calls that require more units than that are canceled en route. So next slide, please. So the top 5 calls for this past month were sick calls, the fall calls, the death not breathing calls, 31 unconscious calls, and the 6 difficulty breathing calls. So the bulk of our calls were EMS in nature with 92%. Next slide, please. For the year to date, we've had 666 calls. Almost 200 were from the Guardian. Next slide, please. For the responses, we had 601 responses. And again, it's just due to cancellations. That's why those numbers will never balance. Next slide, please. So year to date, our number 1 call here is still fall calls, followed by sick calls, cardiac arrest calls, motor vehicle accidents, and fire alarm activations. Next slide. All right. So if you have binoculars, that would be great. I apologize if this is so small, but we have a lot to report. So the first thing I want to start off with is the Battle of the Badges. We did this with the grocery outlet for the local hunger drive. And I'm not trying to brag, but we seem to be beating up on a lot of police officers. There's a basketball tournament too. Sorry, sir. And we flat out destroyed our B team and Spokane Police Department. What's that, sir? 2 point, sir, a win is a win. Not judging, just saying. We had
Chased them all away.
They're angry.
Right, sure.
Don't be afraid to be scared. Be careful, guys. So water rescue calls, obviously it's that time of year. So we just want to remind everyone to be careful out there, wear your life jackets, and then be prepared to be inside the water. Obviously, if you get dumped, the water is still cold. So hypothermia is real. On July 11th, the Spokane Valley Fire Department will be hosting a meeting for the upcoming levee lid lift. So it'll be an informational meeting, so all is welcome. The next piece, though, that I want to talk about, to me, is one of the most proudest things I've had. Well, it is the proudest things that I've been here since I've been here. And it ironically ties to everything that Chief Simmons has been talking about. We have been named, the Valley Fire has been named the Heart Safe Community Award winner by the International Association of Fire Chiefs. This is a big deal. This is us competing against the rest of the United States of America. So I've been touting this since I got here. that this is, if you're going to have a cardiac arrest or a cardiac issue, the best place to have it is inside our response area. And we've proven that. That is now a fact. So our success though comes from everyone's success that works with us, the police department, the community members, those that are willing to do hands-only CPR while waiting for us to get there. Time is muscle and it makes a difference. Every second counts. This morning, I was talking to the Kiwanis of Spokane Valley, and one of the members there, when I was done, said, "Hey, one of my kid was one of those, a young man, teaching his child how to ride a bicycle, just fell over dead, and they started CPR. We were able to get there, and he's alive today to talk about it, living a normal life." So over the last 8 years, we brought 116 of our community members back to life that were clinically dead. And so we are 50% above the national average. So I don't want to say that we're the best, but we're the best. So there it is. I will also do a shout out to the Liberty Lake Police Department with that ILA. I think that's hugely important. Let's keep this life-saving opportunities and success moving forward. And I think this is a huge deal in order to keep that moving forward. The chief approached us about, "Hey, do you guys happen to have it?" It just turned out that we did. And so we jumped all over that. Wasn't even a question. So we highly recommend that you all vote for that. The significant events, we had a water rescue back in June 11th. There was a reported young man that was in the water, a 20-ish-year-old male. We still have not heard if they've recovered a body. So at this moment, it's still an open case. We responded on June 20th to a child locked in a vehicle, and time always matters when they're in a vehicle. Even in cool weather, you'll never convince me that we shouldn't break the window to get a child out. So we were able to get the child out, and all is good. And then we had a motor vehicle collision on June 24th. It was a little bit out of our district, but out of this district here, but Station 3 was the responder, and all was well. It turned over to police department. So at this time, I'll turn it over to you all if you have any questions.
I don't see any questions, but thank you so much for being such a great partner all these years. I know you're still pretty new, but having been serving the city for as long as I have, I was on some of the original public safety committees with Chief Asmus and previous deputy chiefs, and you guys have always been fabulous working with the city hand in hand and working with our PD. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Okay, just checking one more time to see if we had anybody from the Water and Sewer District. Still don't see. So we'll go ahead and move over to Parks and Arts Commission. Not sure who's here to present. I'm looking.
There is no report this evening.
Okay. Sounds great. So we will move on to our workshop discussion. Tonight, we are talking about the future of the utility tax. So Kyle's been working really hard on this, pulling historical data, putting together some scenarios as we work through this for a bit. So I'm going to let him kind of start this off with some history and just kind of a little bit of a history lesson on how it came about, what it currently covers, and then we can talk about some possible options going forward. Kyle, it's all yours.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor. Council, while Trevor gets that presentation up. Thank you, Trevor. So I wanted to provide a brief history of, so there has been some discussion that has picked up some steam, or we have been discussing this for a couple of years. Is our utility tax rates are currently at 3%. Can we alleviate some of the tax burden, if at all possible, on our utility tax ratepayers and potentially reduce this, find some other sources of revenue potentially to make up any shortfall, things of that nature. So we have put together some scenarios, but first I did want to take everybody through a history of how the utility tax kind of came into being. And so, as everybody's aware, you know, the 2008 housing collapse and subsequent economic recession placed a great strain on, you know, everybody, but obviously, you know, Liberty Lake was no exception. And so, you know, due to those revenue reductions, at that time, council made the decision to pass an ordinance authorizing the collection of taxes on electrical, natural and manufactured gas, telephone, cable, TV, and garbage utilities at a rate of 6% of gross income beginning in 2011. So this was, and it states it right in the ordinance, this was to avoid, you know, reduction in critical city services. So there was, you know, they had a really, really tough time during this economic recession, trying to figure out how we're going to maintain this, you know, really immaculate level of service that our residents have come to expect. And so this was one avenue that the city hadn't taken advantage of prior than most other cities do. And so this was absolutely an appropriate and justified reaction to the current circumstances that they were facing. So just as a little side note to that, now per RCW, they did start out at the maximum amount. If you take a survey of other cities, you're going to find most of them tax at 6% maximum allowed. And so that's what we started out with. That didn't last very long. But I did want to let everybody know, so municipalities are unable to collect tax on satellite TV and internet. So those are specifically prohibited from utility tax collection in the RCW. And so 1 year later, so they put this into place in 2010 for collection in 2011, and then council 1 year later voted to reduce that tax from 6% to 3%. And so that was very, very prudent on their part. They saw the income and bouncing back to roll that back, where a lot of other municipalities would have stuck with 6% and left there. And so kudos to them for identifying that as well. And so, you know, historically, we receipted these utility tax funds into the general fund, general purpose revenues. And so what we did with the 2013 annual budget is reallocate that utility tax revenue to where it lives today in the streets fund. That is a primary revenue generator for our streets operations. Prior to 2013, you know, we'd receive that utility tax into the general fund, but we would use mechanisms as interfund transfers are very normal in municipal government. They happen dozens of times a year throughout different funds as needed. So transfers were made from the general fund to the streets fund to fund those operations. Next slide, please, Trevor. So this is a snapshot of our history. And once again, I'm going to reiterate, I'm going to email all of these slides to you so you can gain a better understanding and really dive into the numbers as you see fit. But this is essentially a snapshot of utility tax revenue that the city has collected since inception. And so you can see those first two slides on the left in the light blue. So those were receipted into the general fund. And then you can see that transition from those revenues from the general fund to being receipted and specifically allocated for street operations. And so we've averaged those out on the far right hand side, so you can see every activity and those totals. And so you can see the biggest generator of utility tax is electric. One thing you'll notice is telephone is actually pretty volatile, and so I would need to gain a better understanding or some sort of event I need to identify that happened. Potentially, you know, the residency of the Comcast business building, that could potentially be a big source of lost utility tax revenue.
Hi,
But
Kyle, real quick, I can answer that.
Absolutely.
Sorry,
Oh,
we
that'd be
did talk about it
wonderful.
earlier today. There was an issue with Verizon at one point not reporting, and so we had a big makeup from them.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Good deal. So as you can see, telephone revenue, you know, let's start from, you know, 2016, where maybe we got a good chunk of that back, 2017 leading into now. So you're going to see a reduction telephone as more folks go to voice over internet. IP and further reduction of just the use, you know, and other forms of communication that aren't taxed. And so the rest of them you can see are fairly stable. Another revenue that we wanted to identify for your guys' knowledge is state shared revenues. We have a gas tax that the state collects that they then disperse to municipalities in proportionate shares. And so you can see that in that light purple there. That also is specifically allocated to streets operations. And so what we've identified here is a pretty simple balance sheet of operational income and operational expenses, and how that has played out year over year. Next slide, please, Trevor.
Kyle, before you go on,
Yeah.
if you want to mention, you know, we do make the transfer almost every year into the streets capital, or sorry if you were going to hit on that later.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I can touch on that now. And so what you can see in the far bottom right-hand corner is that average difference. You know, we're collecting roughly on average 200,000 more than we were expending on an average year. And so what the mechanism that we have put in place is a streets capital fund that we have on average transferred about that amount every year into the streets capital fund for larger capital projects. Next slide, please, Todd. So a couple of options that we wanted to kick around and that the mayor wanted to bring to your attention, and a couple different avenues to attack this. Essentially, you know, we have 4 options that we'd like to present for council consideration. First option is to do nothing. Maintain it at the current tax rate for all utilities, stay at 3%, continue that revenue stream, and you know, find additional uses for any overages. Option 2, we can remove the tax for cable TV and garbage. That's a lesser amount, and those are generally more suited to residents versus businesses. So you could see some cost savings there, specifically for residents and business for residents versus businesses on that cable TV and garbage. We can reduce the tax for all utilities from 3% to 2%, just a flat reduction, 3 down to 2. We'll see an estimated $280,000 in annual tax reduction if that's the route we choose to go. And then the last one is just kind of a halfway point. Reduce the tax from all utilities from 3 to 2.5%. Estimated annual reduction of $140,000. And so what you can see here is, you know, we're removing a revenue or removing a percentage of a revenue stream. What effect does that have, you know, on budgets and capital funds going forward? And what you can see here is so what we're doing, we're trying to simplify the process. And so the note here is impact on any necessary transfers to the streets capital fund or increase in expenditures beyond current revenues will be augmented by the general fund. So we can in real time monitor, you know, how this plays out, and if there are any unforeseen major expenses or any trends that we're noticing. We can always use, as we had to prior to 2013, use the general funds as the streets operations backup. And so that can give us a better understanding of exactly, you know, how we are receiving utility tax and how we are expending streets operations expenditures, and basically get a snapshot of what, if any, transfers from the general fund are going to be needed. Next slide, please.
Before you go on, just as another conversation Kyle and I have had many times over the last several months, we've been doing this. Keep in mind that this utility tax is the only way our businesses such as Huntwood, Peterbilt, the RV places, all pay into streets maintenance. If we don't have the utility tax, there's no method for them to pay into to maintain or to fix some of the damage that they may have done to our streets. So just keep that in mind as we're going forward on this, because we obviously we can't just tax businesses and not the residents. It has to be overall. So I would urge you to take a, you know, as you're evaluating these different options, keep that in mind to make sure that those businesses pay their fair share on the maintenance side of things.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sure.
Next slide, please, Trevor. So we're going to go through a couple different scenarios as we had previously mentioned. And so the first one was just to remove the 3% cable and garbage utility tax. and see what effect that has on revenues. And you can see, you know, right away, we're getting a pretty good balance between operational revenue and operational expenditures. And so, again, I just want to highlight, you know, that is a true, you know, one-for-one comparison. We're not setting anything aside for streets capital. And so that's going to be incumbent upon the general fund to make those necessary transfers to, you know, accommodate capital expenditures on the street side. But as you can see, you know, 2023 and beyond, you know, we're pretty close to where we need to be on a one-for-one for revenue and expenditures. Next slide, please, Trevor. So the reduction to 2% is a little bit greater of an impact. Not to say that this is not an option, because as noted before, any deficit that we see, you know, these are budgeted expenditures, and we try to get for these purposes as close to real life as we can. But any budgeted or any deficit that we see is going to be augmented by the general fund if council chooses to proceed and reduce to 2%. We'll see a roughly $280,000 decrease in revenues for the streets fund. It'll be incumbent upon the general fund to make up that deficit, and we can show that it can, if that's the case. Next slide, please, Trevor. And then here's our halfway point between obviously no action and 2%. And this is kind of similar to, you know, the elimination of the garbage and cable TV is, you know, we have a little bit more of a buffer here for unexpected items that may not necessarily need to involve the general fund. But we're getting pretty close to a one-for-one here. And so we're trimming down as much, you know, as we deem appropriate to get to this one-for-one. And that, I think that's kind of the target for trying to identify where we can, you know, ease the burden on residents regarding utility tax. And so these are a few of the different next slide, please, Trevor. So these are the different options. Me and the mayor have gone back and forth, as she said, for a couple months on this. And so you know, I think she has some ideas and routes that she wants to go. And so I will turn it over to her and entertain any questions after her.
No, really, I think the only other thing I would just add to what I've already said and what Kyle's had in his presentation, if you look at the one where we take off the garbage and cable, that's probably not going to affect. It has the potential of not, you know, of not affecting some families. For instance, we take our garbage to the dump and we don't have cable TV. You know, keeping in mind that internet and satellite aren't taxed. So in my mind, starting with the reduction to 2.5 and see, you know, how it goes. You know, we do have in our in the ordinance to review this once a year. So any decision you guys make on, you know, what to do with this, it would be effective for the budget for 2023. So I open up for comments and questions. Councilmember Sahlberg.
Kyle or the mayor, could you remind us of the rates of other Spokane County municipalities for utility taxes? You've done that before.
Yes, and so it's 6% across the board from my understanding. I am going to get you that information before I say that's concrete fact. 6% is the standard. 3% is an outlier when we're talking about municipalities and utility tax. But I will grab that information, and as long with these slides, I will provide that information to mayor and council as well. See what other neighboring cities and what cities across the state are charging for utility tax.
Thank you, Kyle.
All right, next. Oh, Councilmember Kurtz.
I had a couple questions. Kyle, how much is in the streets capital fund now?
So we have, I'll pull that up right now. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. So right now we have 375,000 in there right now.
Okay. Can I ask another couple questions? Okay. As far as our, I guess what we're funding for the next 4 years, what are our plans for that money?
So the streets capital is generally for, you know, capital maintenance is kind of a general term, but overlay projects, preservation projects. So you're not looking at like full depth tearing up streets. You're looking at crack seal, you're looking at seal coat, you're looking at different mechanisms to where you can preserve what's there and extend the life of the road.
Okay. So I know that the whole city wasn't built out in 2001, but I think the average road life is about 20 years, and that's about 20 years. Well, it is 20 years since we became a city, but are there any big expenditures for the items you just suggested that are coming up in the next 2 to 4 years?
So yeah, I'll pull up our capital facilities plan, but the thing with these big infrastructure and street projects is they can be fluid from fund to fund. So if we have identified a major project, let's say, you know, the Appleway overlay that's going to be, you know, $2 million coming down the pike in 2 years, you know, we can identify different funds to support that. It doesn't just have to come from streets capital. It doesn't just have to come from REIT. It doesn't just have to come from these other eligible sources of revenue. So we, as a council and as a city, can identify this project for this fund and make sure we're solvent that way, and we can support those expenditures.
Can I ask one more?
Absolutely.
Okay. My last question, Kyle, you talked about the general fund supplementing any sort of deficit in funding for the streets. Would it be a budgeted line item, or would it be the reserves that we're talking about to do that?
So that would be a budgeted line item if that were ever the case. We are not planning on it in case, I guess, unless the decision is to reduce from 3% to 2%, we would probably have a built-in mechanism to where we would transfer 150,000 a year from general fund to streets operations. But no, not so these more incremental approaches, we would not build in that transfer because we are confident that the revenues will support the operations.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah.
Next, Councilmember Cargill.
Thanks, Mayor. Kyle, in response to Councilmember Stolberg's comment, I believe Spokane Valley has the 6%, but only on telephone utilities and not on anything else. They've been having that discussion for a while, unless they change that.
Gotcha.
They've been having that discussion on whether it should be more broad-based than just the telephone. I'm wondering if that graphic can be put back up, that I think was like the third or second graphic that you showed, Kyle, that had just the history of it since 2000.
Oh, sure.
Can we pop that back up there?
Slide 2, I think.
Yes, perfect. This is it. So I did some quick math here, and I'm looking at it basically since the 3% was put in place and put in the streets fund, basically 2013 until now. And what struck me was that because of the increase in use, because of the increase in the number of citizens in the city and so on, we're collecting 33% now, more now on the electric side. We're collecting 41% more on the natural gas side, 60% on cable TV, and then 134% increase on garbage. Again, this is from 2013 to 2021. Those numbers stick out to me like a sore thumb. I do think it's important to point out that not all cities necessarily use the utility tax solely as the fund for their streets. I mean, there are a lot of cities that have the extra $20 car tab fee that can be put in place, or even higher than that. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's what we need to do, but I will point out that the challenge with this is that the people who don't necessarily use the roads, perhaps a lot of our senior citizens who may not drive a lot, who have that electric bill, have that natural gas bill, have that cable TV bill each and every month. They're the ones who are putting money into the system to cover the streets which they may not use. That's where I have a little bit of difficulty with using the utility tax. I would much rather see it be used as a user fee. In other words, the card tab a part of this, than rather having it be put on people regardless of where you are in the city or your age or your income level. I will also point out that I think the cable TV part of that, you can make the argument on these other ones, the garbage, the electric, the natural gas, those are necessities.
Yeah.
The cable TV one is not a necessity. And I think it's important to point out that, you know, if you've got enough money to have cable TV, then paying a little extra tax on it is not necessarily a bad thing. Just going through some of my other notes here that I wanted to comment on, and I think that was it for now. But you know, I would be in favor of trying to find, you know, some hybrid way we could do this, to where we're trying to lower the utility tax, which hurts those on a fixed income and others more, and putting more of the burden and the onus on, as the mayor said, the businesses that might use the streets, if that's what we need, and folks who have vehicles and use those cars as well on our streets.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councilmember Dunn.
Yeah, I have a question, I think directed towards Lisa, and relates to the capital facilities plan and specifically roads and road maintenance of existing inventory. I'm trying in my own recollection recount the last residential overlay project that we completed as a city. Was it Settler Drive from Liberty Lake Road to a little bit short of Country Vista?
While that was before my time, yes, I believe that is correct. You'll see in the capital facilities plan, we have, I believe in 2024, we're going to be doing a pavement master plan and to assess the remaining residential streets, and we'll then be prioritizing them. So in our out years, we don't have a lot of projects right now because we haven't yet had the assessment to be able to say how to prioritize those. But that is absolutely something that's going to be happening in the future.
Thanks. That's consistent to my recollections, and it had me. I was thinking from Councilmember Kurt's observation regarding ages of this current city streets inventory. I would foresee that there would be ongoing, and I'd say increased levels of expense to maintain streets that are aging out beyond the 20-year period.
Yeah.
You know, overlay and things more than just crack seal.
If I may say, one of the things that by doing grind and overlays early in the when roadways start to fail, it significantly extends the life and keeps you from having to do the full replacement. And obviously, we almost missed the boat on Kramer. If that had been caught a couple years earlier, we might have avoided the extent of the partial reconstruction that we're doing now. And that's a cautionary tale for us not to be funding necessary maintenance sooner rather than later.
I'm grateful. My observation is the city's past experiences and expense with respect to maintenance of existing inventory may not be a good future indicator of what our future expense will be as we get into I'd say a greater age period for some of the roads that we have. I was reflecting on the chart that was provided in the tax history assessment and what was relayed as operational expenditure. I could foresee that when we truly incorporate what the inventory of existing roads and their ongoing, I'm going to say, reconstructive related maintenance is incorporated, those expenditures may go up. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyway, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Would like to echo a little bit of what Dan just said. I totally agree. I don't think it's good business to take the last 10 years of historical and apply that to what we're going to need going forward. because we're growing and the city's gonna grow. More residents, more vehicles, more road maintenance is going to have to happen. In the neighborhood I live in currently, those folks are in for a rude awakening because they haven't done anything to their roads for 20 years. So I certainly don't want to sit here and see the city make the same mistake. For me, $1 million a year towards our streets is just good business. And if we use it all, we use it all. If we don't, we save it for the next upcoming project. But keep in mind, the cost to do these jobs or these road repairs don't usually go down. It only goes up. So, I hate to say it, $1 million doesn't get you much anymore these days. So I don't know that until, for me, until we get closer to a budget that you can rely on and a rotation that you can rely on and built out city you can rely on, can you really start toying with a big part of the funding that takes care of our streets? Respectfully, I want to comment on not everybody uses the streets, so on and so on. I understand that, but not everybody has kids in school, and I still pay taxes to the schools. So I get it. But it's kind of like, it's funny. It's like when I build a house today, versus 10 years ago, the people that are there 10 years ago, they're like, well, they should be fixing the streets. Well, we went through the same motions 10 years ago to build your house as we are today. So everybody gets to enjoy paying for the installation of new and the maintenance as we go, regardless of usage in my mind.
We also, don't forget, and some people may not realize this, we do have a rebate program on the utility tax. We rarely have anybody apply for it, and we advertise it a lot. I think my parents were one of the only ones who ever applied for it. But it's for low income, disabled, senior. I forgot what all of the categories are, but there is an application process. And so there is a way for those people who are lower income to get that utility tax back.
And just two more comments. Once you get behind that curve, it's hard to recover. And the only way to recover sometimes is then to do what would happen 12 years ago, put it at 6%, or raise it quickly to catch up. Yeah, I guess I would be, I don't see, as much as I'd like to lower taxes for everybody, I just think this is a source that we should not fiddle with quite yet, and maybe leave it where it is. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
Councilmember Spencer and Councilmember Kurtz, haven't heard from you guys.
Yeah, I just had a.
Oh, you did. I forgot to mark you down, Andy. Sorry.
Yeah, my question is, Kyle, so what are we anticipating? I know I've heard some different numbers over a course of several meetings. What are we anticipating in the general fund we're gonna have in reserve for this year, for instance?
At the end of the year? Somewhere in that neighborhood of 7 million.
So, I get the comment that Mayor Pro Tem Boyer's saying is, let's take this money and use it and kind of figure out, where we're at over the next couple of years as things maybe settle a little bit, the dust settles. I'm just wondering, is it possible to take $1 million from the general fund and either remove this or reduce it, to half, for instance?
Well, we have to remember, and Kyle, sorry if I'm just going to talk over you here. One of the other reasons that we put this in is because it's a reliable, steady income source. General fund, most of it comes from sales tax, and that's where we run the risk. Because if we have a big downturn in sales tax, then we lose our funding for these kind of things.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Go ahead. I think we're concentrating on the wrong thing here. I don't think anybody on the dais thinks we should not have money to fund roads. The question is, should we be doing it via the utility tax? I also will make the point, and I'm sure there's pluses and minuses about this, but the comment was made at the time when the utility tax was put in place that it was going to be temporary. And now we're here saying that, never mind, it's not going to be temporary. We're just going to continue it for what seems like could be forever. Because that same argument that was made earlier about, well, we need to have the money coming in, and even if we're not going to spend it, let's just keep it in a pile. I mean, we can make that argument each and every year. So I think we made the citizens a promise that it would be temporary. We reduced it, but we still, more than 12 years later now, have not taken the steps to move it back. When I was running, I'm sure everybody else has heard this as well. When they were running, this was one of the top issues that people came to me about. I got an email from a lady who said she was in her 70s, that she wanted to see something done with the utility tax because she didn't think it was fair to be taxed on basically staying warm in the winter. So I think that's a good point, and I think it's something we need to keep in mind when we're talking about this money, because again, this money does not belong to us or the city, it belongs to the citizens. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess there's no more comments. I guess what's the action? You know, we're in a workshop, you know, do we have does council want to bring this back for another workshop? What's the action here? I guess, you know, we've got some options on the table to choose from, or do we have something else? Councilmember Kurtz.
I think if we're going to talk about reducing or removing the utility tax, we have to actually have a plan for how to fund the roads.
Yep.
And we don't have that yet. So I'm not willing to vote on reducing the tax because we don't have a plan for how to fund the roads.
Yep.
I did some quick math too. One of my recent power bills was $200, gas and everything. And reducing it by 0.5% only reduces it by $12 over the year. I mean, it's really it's a very minimal amount, and I don't know if $12 over a year is really going to have a significant impact on the citizens. So I think if we're looking for a tax lowering method for the citizens, I don't know that this is it. But without a plan in place to fund the roads adequately and fund our reserves for our capital investments, I'm not willing to get rid of it either. So as far as an action item, I don't know who to ask this of, but if there are any other creative ways as we're going into the budgeting process for the next year, that we can look at funding the roads on a steady, consistent income basis, which is what was mentioned. I'm willing to consider that, but I feel like today, I don't feel like moving forward on an action plan myself.
Great. Well, you know, like I said, it is part of the ordinance that we will revisit this every year during the budget process. So I think this is a good start to the conversation. Keep it open, and as we start going through the budget process, you know, maybe we can find some more creative things. I know Kyle and I were hoping, I had heard something at one of my trainings that we could divert a portion of our sales tax over to gas, over to streets, but we're already doing that with the gas tax. So I was hoping that would be our in. So if anybody filling up here would be paying for it, but it didn't work out. So we've got some things that we can look at. Councilmember Cargill and then Councilmember Solberg.
Can I just make one more request that when we bring this back, we seriously consider the discussion about how many vehicles we have registered in the city and whether a car tab fee would be feasible to replace this. Again, I'm not saying that necessarily that's what I want to go for, but I would like to at least see the numbers that says, okay, we've got 5,000 vehicles registered in the city, and if we charge everyone $20, this is the amount of money it would take.
Okay. Kyle, you got that?
Yep, absolutely.
I'm not quite sure how we do that with the businesses and how all that works, but we've got some time to look at.
I will find a way. Yeah.
Councilmember Solberg.
Can't believe that you're the one who said that we might be doing a car tab tax. It's gonna take a while to soak in. I agree with Councilmember Kurtz and Fuller at this particular point. I think we're premature. I'm not opposed to the idea of reducing the utility tax if we have the money to replace that. But going anywhere beyond 2.5% at this time, from the numbers that we've had in front of us, unless we can find a replacement for that. And I would not be in favor of a vehicle tab tax.
Okay.
We already pay enough for that.
All right.
One last comment, Mayor, if I
Absolutely.
can. Yeah, and I guess the other part of this equation, none of us knows is where this economy is going right now. So to make changes like this would make me a little concerned today. But yeah, I agree. Down
I
the road.
appreciate the discussion.
Yep.
Car tabs, wow.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for the input. I know Kyle and I have.
Can I make
some-
one
you
more
know how to
comment?
spell his name, don't you?
Yeah,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
That's-
I just think it's somewhat humorous that we're talking about how large of a decision it would be to reduce something from 869,000 to 655,000. Or excuse me, to the number that Kyle mentioned. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but we have no problem with putting out a $6 million+ bond as
Keep it-
well. So,
Keep it on topic, please. Thank
well,
you.
I just think it's,
Okay, understood. All right, we are on to general business. Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the June 20, sorry, let me back up. Let me make a motion for, to approve the consent agenda, items 10A and B.
Second. I've got a second from Councilmember Dunn. Any discussion or questions? All right, not hearing any. All in favor of approving the consent agenda items A and B, please say aye.
All right.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 6-0.
All righty, general business, action item 11A. Make a motion to confirm the mayor's appointment of Mark McAvoy to the city administrator position.
Second. A second from Councilmember Kurtz. All right, so before we take a vote, I have asked, Mark has joined us, and I know I said before, council has met him and everything, but I have asked him to give a little introduction to those guests who are joining us. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for staying up. You're on mute. I don't know if you know that. There you go.
Sorry, hopefully that solves the problem there.
Great.
Thank you, Mayor, and City Council members. It's a pleasure to be back before you again. It's been a couple of weeks since I was out there, but just for those who may be listening that I didn't have a chance to meet when I was in town, my name is Mark McAvoy. It's really an honor to be before you tonight with you considering the mayor's recommendation to appoint me as the city administrator. This is something that decision personally that I've not taken lightly. You all have heard me answer questions with respect to my desire to come to Liberty Lake. You have a really strong strategic plan. I look forward and I'm excited about helping to lead the execution of that plan going into the future. Looking forward to building relationships with other community leaders to solve some local challenges. Many of them you've been discussing back and forth this evening. And so I'm really excited about joining the team, plugging into the community and becoming part of what makes Liberty Lake a great place, which is the residents that you have in town. And I'll be bringing a family of 4 to add to the population there within the next several weeks. So looking forward to that. Just a little bit about me. I've been in local government for a little over 20 years. I really love solving local problems. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time in local government. I've been with a couple of cities for the last 5. I've been in 2 cities in North Texas, working as both a department head and an assistant city manager. And so looking forward really to build or bring the skills that I've built over that time, some of the experience that I've gotten through those 2 experiences, and really plugging into the team. It's a great staff. I've had the opportunity to meet most everyone, and am thrilled about just the exciting opportunity of coming and being a part of that, and looking forward to hitting the ground running and being part of the community.
Right. Well, we look forward to having you here. I know you're headed to town, hopefully still this weekend, to do a little looking around. And if anybody has leads on housing, I'll get you Mark's contact information.
That would be fantastic. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, I don't know. The house 2 doors down from me just went up for sale, but I think that might be a little too close. You probably don't want me that close. So thanks for coming tonight. We look forward to having your family here. So if there's no questions or discussion on item A to confirm Mark to the city administrator, I'll take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thanks, everybody. Motion passes 6-0.
Great, thank you. Next item is general business 11B. I'll make a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to execute the contract, including the changes provided by our fabulous city attorney for the incoming city administrator.
We have a second. We have a second from Councilmember Kurtz. Any questions, comments? All right, not seeing or hearing any. All in favor of approving the contract for the incoming city administrator, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, motion, ayes have it 6-0. Welcome, Mark, you're official. Well, I guess not until I send you the document, but close enough.
Yeah, close enough. Thank you all.
Thank you. We'll be
Thank you.
talking soon.
All right, look forward to it.
Thank
Great.
you. Moving right along, general business 11C as amended, make a motion to approve the interlocal agreement between the city of Liberty Lake Police Department and the Spokane Valley Fire Department.
Second.
I think we had a second from Councilmember Solberg. Any discussion? I think we had a great presentation and I think we all see the value. All right, so all in favor of approving the interlocal with Spokane Valley Fire Department, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, motion carries 6-0. Great. All right, moving right along. It's time for council comments, not to include upcoming agenda items. So is there anything council wants to add after we've been through this part of the meeting? All right, moving on then, we have no public hearings or appeals, no resolutions, and we are on to the second read of ordinance 286. Kelsey. And it's so nice to have you in the room with us. I just want to tell you that.
So we have ordinance number 286, an ordinance of the city of Liberty Lake, Washington, amending the city's development code to allow personal care services in the light industrial zone as a limited use.
Right. Motion.
Oh, sorry, that's me. Sorry,
It's okay.
sorry. I'll make a motion to approve the second read ordinance number 286.
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Dunn, and since this is an ordinance, we do open up for citizen comments. If anybody here or online would like to comment, we've got the yellow forms here, or if any of our citizens online would like to comment on this ordinance, please send a quick note to Trevor in chat and he will let me know. Not seeing or hearing any. I know it's real exciting stuff tonight, not controversial. I love that. All right, so not hearing any citizen comments, we'll go ahead and move to a vote. So all in favor of approving ordinance 286, amending city's development code, please raise your right hand and say aye. I see 1, 2, 3, 4. I see 6. Any opposed? All right, motion carries 6-0. Thank you. And no emergency ordinances, introduction of upcoming agenda items. Kelsey, we're back to you. Here. Oops, I lost my copy. There it is. All right, so you guys all have the on your desks, the updated sheet. Kelsey, do you have anything you need to add on this one? Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay, so July 5th, we took care of that tonight. We have Trailhead update at 7 p.m. on the next meeting. So this looks like our only workshop. So sounds like we can get that done at 7 o'clock unless Lisa, you think it'll take any special extra time, or can we just do that at 7?
Can I get back to you on that? I'd like to ask the team.
Okay, sure. Thank you. We'll try for 7.
We'll try for 7.
Yep. July 26th, we have special meeting for the vote cast training. Actually, Kelsey, if I can just have you kind of weigh in on that a little bit, just explain to the council what that is, unless you did that last week when I missed the meeting.
Just touched on it briefly last
Okay.
week. So it'll be about an hour, hour and a half of training on the Granicus vote cast system so that you guys will enter your votes into Granicus during the meetings. It'll automatically tally, automatically record who votes in favor, who votes opposed, that sort of thing. So
Great. Super. So if anybody can't make that meeting, we'll make arrangements for something else.
yeah, we'll record.
Great. August
A question. on that,
yes, go ahead.
Maybe I'm the only culprit. I haven't done the I legislate.
You
sign on
haven't?
thing. Okay. Okay. You want
You
that
will
done
want to
before
make sure
that.
you do that before
Okay, I
July
just wanted to-
26th. Yeah.
Tom's the winner on that one.
I wasn't the only one.
I'm not encouraging you, Phil.
Thank you.
Okay, then tentatively, another update on Trailhead on this August 2nd. We have put a TBD on financial policy updates to wait until after the audit closes and see if they have anything to us to add. Then we have our other TBDs, Code of Ethics, social media. I'll follow up with that document that was shared with me at AWC. Councilmember, then we still have Lime scooters on here. You know, I know it was kind of a big thing for a while and I had intended on bringing them back, but I haven't heard anything out of the community about wanting that. How do you feel about tabling that?
I'd say table
Okay.
and I'll return next season.
Perfect. Sounds good. Selkirk Middle School and Hub Trail, that is in the county and the school district's hands. Director of Safety from CV. I don't know what, I figure out which role you're in here, sitting here. I know you got your fire commissioner shirt on. Do you know if there's been any follow-up discussions on that trail between CV and the county on the right of way?
The new superintendent started today.
Okay, that's
Dr.
right.
Parker, and so I'm sure as he gets acclimated into the office, and we'll have those discussions. with him.
Perfect. Great, thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot. So we'll keep that TBD and library policy update. I know the board's still working on that. Jandy, is there anything you can share? Do we want to put a date on the board updating the council on where they are?
We're working on going over our collection development policy. We've been going through each section. We started actually working on it in February, but we've been going through the whole thing, and our plan is to put it to a vote with the board in September at our September meeting.
Great. Okay. Thanks for that update. All right. Anything else to add? Councilmember Follier.
Just a question, Mayor. Trying to remember when we started actually budget discussions last year. Was it in
The presentation is usually the first meeting in October, right, Kyle?
That is correct. And so we'll put out the call to directors in August and start compiling that information in September and start presentations in October.
So they're usually kind of constantly working on it.
No, I know. I just trying to get in the right mindset.
Yes. And Kyle promises not to land in the hospital 5 days before we have to
Oh my gosh.
present it.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
All right, anybody have anything you want to add to the future workshop agenda? Oh, all right.
Madam Mayor, real
Yes,
quick, do we want a time frame for me to bring back any additional follow-up information on ARPA?
Let's leave it on there as TBD and we can
Perfect. Sounds good.
let everybody kind of wrap their head around it. And then we can figure out when we want to bring that back for further discussion.
Sounds good.
I see Lisa Key has her hand up. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, yes, so I just wanted to mention that generally speaking, we, for the capital facilities plan, we'll do a workshop in September, probably late September, to get the conversation started on that.
All right. We'll add that. We'll add the CFP for TBD September.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor.
Yes.
One more question about, so are we putting utility tax back on or streets funding discussion or something?
So question is when to have that. Let's put it on for TBD.
Yeah.
And we'll certainly tackle that during our
Yeah,
initial.
it'll be during the
discussion.
budget season, but I don't want to wait so long as
Right.
that we're changing it after the budget is presented.
Right.
So we'll have to figure out what those dates are.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe TBD September as well.
Okay. Sounds good. Anybody else? All right. We have no emergency. Oh, we already did that one. Citizen. Yeah, I rewinded just like Mayor Pro Tem did. Citizen comments. We have our third chance. Anybody here in chambers or online want to make any citizen comments? I think they're dropping quickly. All right. I'm not seeing any. We have no executive session, and if there are no objections, we'll adjourn. Any objections?
Negative.
We are adjourned. All right. Thanks.